Welcome to the Hoops Hall of Fame podcast. This is Matt Lehner, your host, and today I want to talk about something a little more specific, a little more practical for you basketball players. It's not going to be as philosophical as the last few podcast episodes have been. It's a question I get asked, or I've been asked by some athletes before when they're doing certain shooting programs or programs that have shooting specific drills, specific repetitions for the shooting drills, and that is, do you count makes, do you count takes? Now, first off, for those of you who don't know the difference, obviously, you have a shooting program that's predetermined, preset, already written out with a certain number of drills and a certain number of repetitions, and counting makes would be actually only counting the shots if you make it, if it goes in. And then you would do that for the number of repetitions listed for the specific shooting drill. Or just counting takes would be just counting the number that is listed, and you shoot that many shots, and maybe you record the number that you made. Now, first off, some athletes like to count makes because they get more shots. Some athletes like to count takes because then they can record the number they made out of the number of shots taken and then progress over time. I like both. I've used both. I typically prefer counting makes, but actually right now I'm doing a program that does something a little different than just counting makes, which I'll get into in a little bit, so please bear with me. But I typically like to do makes. It just feels like you're actually getting a certain number of shots in, and you just feel like you're getting more repetitions. I don't count takes because I get that you like to track your improvements over time, but the thing is, if you're doing that every workout, you typically have to stop, run over, record it, or take out your phone and punch it in, and it just takes more time, and it just feels like you're getting out of focus for your workout. Obviously, it's tough to make improvements every single workout. As I've discussed in a previous podcast, you don't necessarily improve every single day. So keeping track of your improvements every single workout is kind of counterproductive. You can track your improvements over the period of months, over years, and I will do workouts where I'll test my shooting and record the number. But again, that's once every couple weeks, every couple months. It's not every single workout. Now, there is a 5-step progression for shooting when it comes to counting makes or takes in your workouts that I've used, and I have specific numbers that you can determine which level you're at. Now, these numbers aren't set in stone. You don't have to take these numbers 100% to the letter, but I just wanted to give numbers for those athletes who like to have a specific guideline to go by. Now, the first level when it comes to counting makes or takes in your workout would be if you're shooting around 50 to 59% or less in a specific shooting drill. Now, that means if you're shooting a certain shot or a certain type of drill, obviously that would mean if out of 10 shots you can hit 50, at least 5, maybe 6 or less in that specific drill. For this level 1, you would count takes. Now, this is typically going to be a player who's first starting out, a younger player. Typically your focus is going to be on form, and your focus is going to be on getting repetitions to build muscle memory. So in this case, we might not even necessarily have a certain number of shots. We're just going to go in the gym and work on our form, work on our one-hand form shooting, work on close shots, work on our follow-through, and then just work on spots just to get those repetitions up. So in this case, we're not necessarily going to even count makes. We're not going to do anything else. We're just going to go in and get repetitions up. Now, the next level 2, would be counting makes. So this is where we're actually counting the number, only counting the shots for the workout if we make the shot. Typically, this range is going to be if you're shooting 60 to 75% in that specific drill. So if you're in that range, again, these numbers aren't set in stone, but for those of you who like to have a range, which is typically how I like to do it, you can count makes if you're in the 60 to 75% range, which means if you're making 6 or 7 shots out of 10, if you're shooting 100, it'd be 60 to 75 shots. In that range, you would count makes. Obviously, the reason why we're doing this is because if you took a player who was at level 1 and you had them counting makes, they would be in the gym for 5, 6, 7 hours. Obviously, that's not beneficial to your game. So we want to have a process to go by so that we're being challenging ourselves, but at the same time, we're also not in the gym for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, which, as we've discussed before, is not the proper way to be training. Now, level 3 would be counting makes in a row, meaning you only count the shots. Say you got to make 4 shots in a row at a specific drill before you move on to the next one. Now, this is a lot more challenging for shooters who have been counting makes for a while. This would be the next level. And again, a good range to go by for this level 3 would be 75 to 90%. If you're shooting about 75 to 90% in a specific shooting drill, you can start counting makes in a row. Now, typically you would do anywhere from maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 shots in a row for a specific drill, and then you'd move on to the next one. This is really going to challenge your shot, especially when you first start out doing it. It's going to be very challenging. But again, obviously, as we move up in our shooting ability, we want to start challenging ourselves in different ways. Now, that was level 3. Level 4 would be counting swishes. Now, obviously, when you first start out doing this, it's going to be very tough. So that's why this level, I recommend you be shooting anywhere from 90 to 94%. Now, there's probably very few players in general who are going to be at these next 2 levels in terms of shooting. There's tons, and I guarantee you a lot of the NBA players aren't even at this level, other than maybe Steph Curry. But shooting 90 to 94% into a specific drill and training is going to be very tough. But if you're at this level, you can start counting swishes, meaning that you only count the shot. If your goal is to make 20 shots at a specific drill, you'd only count it if you swished it. So that really changes your perspective. And making shots will just become second nature to you, because you're during this process, you're not even focused on making the shot. You're focused on swishing the shot. So making shots is going to become second nature to you, which obviously at this level is going to be where you need to be focusing. And the last level, level 5, would be swishes in a row. Now, this is going to be very, very challenging. I'm not even at this level. So I'd recommend, if you're going to do this, you're shooting 95% or higher in your training on a specific shooting drill. And again, there's probably very few, if any, athletes who are at this level. Now, this can just show you how good you can truly become at shooting, and what you can aspire to through your training to see where you can get to. Because again, I guarantee you there's probably very few athletes who can shoot 95% consistently at any shooting drill in the world right now. So swishes in a row would be the last level. Again, you would only count the shot if you swish it, and you have to do that in a row. So you might make 4, 5, 6 swishes in a row. And if you make it, but it's not a swish, then you start back at 0 and you got to work your way up. Again, very challenging. Very few athletes are probably at this level. So again, I'll recap the 5 levels. Level 1 would be counting takes, 50 to 59%. This is, again, going to be beginners, people who are first starting out with shooting, with our focuses on form and repetitions. Second level would be makes, counting makes for our shots in our shooting program. This is typically going to be 60 to 75%. And level 3 would be makes in a row, and this level would be 75 to 90%. And level 4, swishes, 90 to 94%, and the all-coveted level 5, swishes in a row, 95%. So just a little shooting progression for y'all to consider in your shooting program. Again, you don't have to overthink this. This is just something cool for a lot of you athletes who are wondering these things just like I have, and I got asked this question a few times, so I figured I'd address it and give you a little cool program that you can implement in your shooting program to really see improvements over time. Again, these numbers aren't hard and fast, they're just numbers I came up with to really kind of break it down. If you feel you're ready to move on to the next stage, by all means, go ahead. You want to become the master of your own game, a master of your own decisions, be independent thinking and an independent mind. So if you feel you're ready to progress. If you don't. Again, at the end of the day, you have the best feel for your game, more so than anybody else in most circumstances, unless, again, if you're a really young athlete. But again, I think a lot of you are older, or you've been playing basketball for a while, so you can make these decisions yourself. And again, thanks for listening. This is Matt Lehner on the Hoops Hall of Fame podcast. Please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know if there's any specific topics you'd like me to address. I've gotten some questions about the mental aspect of basketball, which a lot of athletes are picking up on because they see the value in it, and a lot of trainers are starting to address this topic. So I will attempt to do the same. Again, it's something I study religiously, so I'll definitely address those topics for y'all. But again, please like, subscribe on YouTube specifically, and follow me on Twitter, and I'll talk to all of you again tomorrow on the Hoops Hall of Fame podcast.